This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
M.I.P.
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
God bless you. Get woke. Folks, MIP is now COVID-free, meaning free to all subscribers as we navigate this pandemic. We're thinking about everyone, and we've got to get through this together. So for a limited time, no fee to subscribe to Make It Plain on your favorite podcast app. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Make It Plain as always. It is definitely time to have the conversation we are about to have. Make no mistake about it. Black women are responsible for a black woman who is on the national ticket for the White House. And we want to talk to the black women who helped make that happen. There are two hashtags: win with black women, listen to black women. And you all, everybody knows me. I have no problem doing that. I was raised by black women. So being raised by my mother and grandmother, I'm actually a little scared of black women. So I just do what they say. You know, when sister tells me what to do, that's what I do. And both my wives, I didn't propose to them. They told me, you gonna marry me? And I did it, because I listen to black women. So everybody needs to listen to black women at this moment. Joe Biden did. So we want to introduce these dynamic black women who helped to make this happen. And I'm just going to mention a little about each one, and then we're going to have a conversation. Our dear friend Jotaka, Eaddy, we've been freedom fighting together for years, but she's the convener of the Win with Black Women movement that has convened several hundred black women leaders of every industry. And she's known, for real, as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley, and is the founder and CEO of Full Circle Strategies. We might end up calling her the Olivia Pope of the whole Democratic campaign, along with these other sisters, because they saved the race, I think. We'll get into that. Mamee Groves is with us too. She's a hospitality professional for the largest private club company in North America. She's from Virginia. She currently lives in Virginia. She's also a university, USC graduate, the other USC, University of South Carolina. And being there was, I've just learned this, was a 4-time track and field national champion. Amen. That's very impressive. So we're glad to have a national champion here with us as well. Karen Finney, we all know and love. Karen Finney has been a communications strategist for the Democratic Party and practically every Democratic campaign going back to the Clinton years. Formerly had a show on MSNBC. She played a big role in the party in 2000, 2004, 2008, and she managed communications for all of those nominees as well. Hillary Clinton when she ran for Senate, John Kerry's campaign, Howard Dean. So she has been the consummate political professional as a black woman. And again, I just want to be clear, black women have always played these important roles, but we haven't always given them the credit they deserve. And last but not least is Christina Q. She previously served in the Obama administration for all 8 years. And during the 2020 presidential cycle, she's worked for Secretary Castro and the Senator Elizabeth Warren campaigns. And she also resides in South Carolina, is the lead principal of On Q Management Group. LaTosha Brown is going to rejoin us in a second of Black Voters Matter. And just for the record, I see all these South Carolina folk. So we'll begin with Miss South Carolina herself, Jotaka Eaddy. Jotaka, tell us what happened last weekend. You all pulled this off literally about a week ago, didn't you?
Mark, first of all, thank you for having us. It's always good to be with you. You're a friend. I think we've been in the trenches together for probably about 15 years. I think our first meeting together probably was a planning meeting for the 40th anniversary of the March on Washington. So I think we've been in the trenches on a number of death penalty cases, voting rights cases. So it's good to be with you, my brother. This movement actually started long before any of us that are sitting in this broadcast were even born. And I think it's important to lift up that what happened on Tuesday is really a part of a long legacy of Black women who have stood in their power, who have resisted against even forces of other women, white women, against our brothers, that persevered and worked and toiled to ensure that we had that moment. So this work that you saw at the end really was a part of a long legacy. It's also important to note that Black women, particularly as it relates to this 2020 election and this VP ticket, have actually been organizing and speaking out for several months. There was a letter that was led by Sisters Lead, Sisters Vote, Holly Holiday, Melanie Campbell, Mignon Moore, and so many other sisters that we all know, love, and appreciate it, actually led on an open letter to Vice President Biden, urging him to strongly consider a Black woman on that ticket. I am very honored to be one of the original 200 women to sign on to that letter. And that letter actually really shaped what became a very important narrative. And the conversation shifted from, well, if Vice President Biden is going to point a Black woman to that ticket to, how could he not? And so what we also saw was, as this conversation shifted, so did the racism, so did the attacks. And so it was, I think, the very early part of August 1st, I was sitting at home and I just got a spirit in me of enough. It was like absolutely enough. We had seen these narratives. We've seen this conversation about Senator Harris being too ambitious. We saw the pitting of Black women against each other. This notion where the Politico runs this headline or this narrative that Congresswoman Karen Bass is the anti-Kamala Harris. And we saw all of these personal attacks on these Black women, all highly qualified Black women who were named in the VP process, that no other person in the process, the other white women, had not been subjected to, and no man in any previous process had ever been subjected to. And so I just sat there and I sent out an email to about 60 or 70 of my friends. And I have a lot of friends. I like to do this hashtag, my friends are dope. And it wasn't just me, because I sent out an email, but everyone was feeling the same thing. And we knew what we had to do. And that's what Black women always do, is come together and save America, save this party. And we came together under a banner of Win with Black Women. And what we wanted to do is send a very strong message to everyone, the media, to even donors, select members of the vetting committee, that what we would not do would be to allow the racism and the sexism that was taking place in this VP process. Also, very many members of those more than 700 women that signed on to this open letter also wanted to make a very clear point that it was important for there to be a Black woman on this ticket. And so that group of amazing, strong Black women, intergenerational, from all across the country, came together and was very loud and clear what we knew both in our hearts, what we knew that the polling showed us, that, in swing states, Higher Heights released the poll. 48% of voters in swing states felt that it was important for Vice President Biden to put a Black woman on the ticket. 60% in those swing states of millennials and Gen Z felt that it was important. So we knew in polling, we also knew in our hearts and mind, and also Black women were very clear. We were tired of being called the backbone of the party, and indeed being the backbone of the party. And it was time for the party to recognize us as the leaders that we always have been, that we are today, and that we will be tomorrow.
Mark, can I just add to that if it's okay? Because part of where this also started, I know LaTosha is going to join us shortly, and those of us who did that initial letter, you may remember that very early on, Stacey Abrams, the Biden campaign, kind of had her name out there as somebody early on that they might consider for vice president. And then when we found out that her name really was on the list, and I just, as a sidebar, I worked for her campaign in 2018, so I don't want to, so I do love her, but I don't want to, I'm not playing favorites here, but, she was so bold and honest about answering when reporters said, you're on the tick, your name has been mentioned, you're on the job, instead of the kind of usual Washington, the way the men have done it. She said yes, and here's why I'm qualified. Here's my bona fides. And I think that's important to point out, because as Black women, so often, we are overqualified, we have extra credentials, and we get completely overlooked. And what we started to see were some attacks on her for being so bold and so honest. And that was initially part of why a group came together under this banner of Black and female. That, yes, some people were, at that point we had a list of about 5 sisters, I think, or 6, who we knew were on the extended list. But we thought it was so important to unify Black women and to show a unified voice that Black women needed to be taken seriously as potential vice presidential nominees. And that was part of how we shifted that conversation from if to why not. And, increasingly, what was a beautiful thing to see is so many other people joining that conversation publicly, whether it was through op-eds or columns. And I think that's so important because, I think for Black women, as Jotaka was saying, we just were determined. And certainly when we saw what was going on in the last couple of weeks, that we were not going to let this happen on our watch. I liken it to, to my mind, it's one of those moments where 20 years from now, when somebody says, where were you? I wanted to be able to say, I was with my sisters and we were trying to make sure this happened, because that's how important this is. And we couldn't let this moment pass.
No, that's very important. And Karen, let me ask you this, having been an activist within the party for a number of years, I had former mayor of DC, Sharon Pratt, on with me the other evening. And she probably is a Black woman that has the longest history. She was a treasurer within the party in the late 80s, early 90s. And she described how Black women have historically been treated in the party. She used a term that was shocking to a few people. Erin Haynes was on with us, and she drew back when she said it. But Mayor Sharon said that at that time, up until what happened today, that the party often treated Black women, in her words, like a midnight love. And that was it. That is just, yeah, that's what she said. And it went viral. It's going viral right now. It's still on social media. So I want to get your reaction to that. And if you could give some historical perspective, because you have been working in the party, an employee of the party, and probably not gotten a lot of the credit that you deserve. And I can remember a time when you were the only Black woman that was doing a lot of things that were going on in the party on a staff level and on a campaign level. Yeah. So give people just a historical context of how far we've come from that.
Well, I mean, I have to remind people that actually people like Mignon Moore, who worked with Reverend Jackson and also has been, just such a major force in the Democratic Party, Reverend Bishop Leah Daughtry, who was my chief of staff at the DNC when I was there with Howard Dean. Donna Brazil, does not get the credit she deserves. She is the first and only Black woman to run a presidential campaign. And by the way, it was a campaign we won, were it not for hanging chads and all kind of other, craziness, foolishness. And so Yolanda Caraway, I mean, there's so many Black women. And I think I would liken it to feeling like the help and not feeling like the voices and faces who were out in front, but doing a lot of the work behind the scenes. And I think for a while, there are people who were happy to do that because we just wanted to win and we wanted to see things move forward. But then recognizing, we have a responsibility to ourselves and to folks coming up behind us to see that Black women are leaders in this party, are the people, and I think certainly with the elections of more Black women to Congress, I think of Auntie Maxine, but think about how many Black women we have now in Congress, and we have more Black women in terms of elected officials, and changing the idea of how we think about women in power, and specifically Black women in power. And, being sometimes the only one at these tables to say, you can't say that. We can't do that. What about the Black folks? What about this vote? And, I'll tell you, Mark, the other thing, having been in progressive circles for so long, that I think is really important in this moment is, as we know, historically, it has been taken for granted by the Democratic Party and progressives that Black people were progressive and were Democrats without having to feel like they had to work for our vote. And I remember in 2005, when Howard Dean became chair, him saying, it's not to say that other chairs haven't done this, but this idea of you got to show up and ask people for their vote and ask them for their support. And really changing that mentality, which I think has been happening over a period of time, that the Democratic Party, owes it to the Black community, and we're not a monolith, to actively reach out to us and ask for our vote, not just assume you have it. And so that, I think, has been a big part of the struggle and the work that has been going on within the party. And I'll just be clear, it's like when Barack Obama was elected and people were like, oh, we're post-racial. No, it's not all fixed, but this is such a huge, important moment. Mignon made this wonderful point about this is writing, to my mind, it's writing a new chapter in the history of Black women in our country, that we have a Black woman vice president. And I think it is important that people see that Black women were behind, mobilized behind her in a way that made the difference.
Karen, I know you have to run. I want to ask you one more question. What are your thoughts about the attacks that we're now seeing, which I don't think are surprising to any of us, but there are attacks coming. I think when someone's being attacked from all directions, then it means they probably are doing something right. So you have the white supremacists and the right wing and Trump. And then you have an online movement that we all know helped to derail Kamala Harris's campaign during the primary with a lot of falsehood, trying to divide the Black community. What are your thoughts about all of these efforts, and are they going to be a hindrance, or do you have confidence that the majority of voters would see through all of this and do the right thing?
Well, I have confidence in our people because of the way we came together behind Kamala and behind the concept of a Black woman VP, and now behind Kamala. Jotaka mentioned these letters. The first letter has over 1,000 signatories to it, and the second one, I think, over 1,500. There was a letter by 100 Black men. So I think our community realized we had to get behind her in a big way, and I think it is for us to also make sure that we're putting out correct information about her, because certainly some of those memes and themes from the primary are still out there, and we got to stop people from repeating some of them. But, from Trump and the right wing, you're exactly right. I mean, it took them an hour to go ahead and attack her. Here's what I would say about this, though. This othering, this birtherism stuff that they're trying to do. They're trying to whitewash us out of history and delegitimize our existence and our role in this country and our power in this country. And I think we have the most important thing we can do. I think we learned this lesson, frankly, from Barack Obama. I think we have to hold the media accountable. They need to, I was pleased that they said it is a lie. It is not a fact that she is not an American. We have to stop that in its tracks and be very firm and very clear to call out sexism, to call out racism, to call out the lies. Because the barrage, this is the Trump strategy, having gone up against him in 2016, this is what we saw. They just try to muddy the waters with as much junk and misinformation as possible. So we've got to be the trusted voices that people can go to and say, okay, well, let me check this out. That doesn't sound right to me, so let me go find this out. I think that has to continue. We have to be aggressive about it. I think the women who have come together are committed to doing that. But I really think a big piece of this is also holding the media accountable for not trafficking in racism and sexism. And the last thing I'll say, Mark, is, look, this is a learning experience for all of us. We've never had a Black woman on the ticket. So, that's part of why we've got to hold people accountable. We've got to be vocal about this, because some folks are going to make mistakes. They may not realize that it's racist or sexist, even if they should. So we've got to be there to keep it straight. And that was part of what we did, in the last couple of weeks, to say, we're not going to talk about personal traits, likability, she's too ambitious. Talk about what she brings to the table. Talk about what she can do for the ticket. And, we've already seen over $26 million, I think it is, that they've raised. So, she's already bringing a lot to the ticket.
Yeah, no question about it. And we're also seeing she's a Black woman. But I've been hearing, obviously, the whole nation of Jamaica is, just overwhelmed. So, you have Jamaican family is, they serious once they get in on something. The Indian community.
Yeah.
I've even heard from women in the Asian community. The Queensborough president here is Korean, and she was in tears because they see their children see Kamala Harris, and they see themselves. So this is a monumental moment. And I was one of the, LaTosha hit me up over the weekend. She said, Mark, we need to get 100 Black men on this letter. We organized, we got our brothers together. All of you sisters watching this now, tell your brethren to get on this too. Black men, we got to stand up and for once support Black women and get behind them. Karen, if you got to run, I understand, but if you want to stick around, you're welcome to stay. We love you though. Thank you for all your hard work over the years.
Because these women are powerful. So enjoy.
And we will talk again. We'll be hearing more from you. Because listen, if we're going to have a Black woman on a ticket, we need to have more Black women in these commentator roles too. I'm still watching TV, and it's a bunch of white men talking about Kamala Harris. So we need we need to stay on there. Love you, Karen. All right, LaTosha's here. We're going to come back to her. Let me go to Christina. Christina, how did you get involved in this, and what made you decide to sign on to the letter and be active in this yourself?
So one thing I accidentally omitted is that I am also the chief of staff to Full Circle Strategies,
Amen.
which is Jotaka's firm that we are building. Jotaka, as you said, is Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. And so I have been working with her to build a team, and we have clients. And so overnight, anything that Jotaka does, really, and truly anything that she does, I'm her sidekick, and I'm right there, right beside her, doing whatever we need to do in the background to get it done. Whoever we need to connect on email, whatever documents need to be drafted, whatever we need to do, I'm right there to get it done. And so, like we were talking about earlier, as a millennial, for me, I'm happy to be in this space, to see the intergenerational mix of this group come together. So your Leah Daughtry's, your Donna Brazils, that was, a political idol for me to work with and, for Donna Brazil. And now to be able to work in a collaborative space with her, and then even younger sisters who are just getting out of college, go Gamecocks, Mamee and Jotaka. But, so as a millennial, it's just really exciting to be in this space where we can collaborate and come behind a common cause. And, I think we were all looking for, even working on these campaigns in the 2020 cycle, everybody was looking for that Barack Obama, magical, candidate that was going to just really excite us again, especially as Black people. And I think, in a roundabout way, took us several candidates to get there. But I think this moment, it really feels like that all over again, where we are energized as a race. And I'm just really excited about, to see what's going to come and how our community is going to come together and coalesce. And we're going to build that, wall around Kamala Harris to protect her for this ticket.
Christine and I were plotting, y'all, before the rest of y'all came on, about the wall that needs to be built, because there's so much, there's so many things going on online that are targeting her. And I already know for a fact that some of that is foreign, all right? A lot of these accounts y'all looking at are not real Black people. I'm gonna give you one way to tell this. I'm gonna give y'all a little tip. If you see an account with a Black person's face that is not a digital photograph, because everybody, even senior citizens, got a digital phone now, and look like something they copy paste out of a yearbook, question that. And then when there's a whole string of numbers as a part of the Twitter name, question it. And look at what's being said. What's your message, Christina, to some of our younger people who spend an inordinate amount of time on social media, who are being targeted and propagandized thoroughly? The millennials, the Gen Zers like myself. What do you say to all of the young people who are looking at what they're looking and being thoroughly confused on purpose?
It's funny too, because I'm a little on that cusp where I'm not that young person that's on Twitter, and I don't get over consumed by Twitter, and I'm not posting every day and all that. But I would say, step out of your bubble and educate yourself, right? Like I would say, listen to what's going on and pay attention, because like everything you see on social media is just so much, and they're inundated with so many things. And that was one of the first things I told Secretary Castro. I was like, don't worry about what Twitter is saying. We got to worry about the reality and get back into the real world. And unfortunately in this, coronavirus space, we are in a very digital community right now. And that is where everyone is getting their information from. And so I would just say, like you're saying, check your source. If you're reading this stuff, pay attention. Like I was looking up somebody, he was a peer of mine, and I looked up his Twitter, and then I saw he was kind of talking about Kamala as a cop and all this stuff in his Twitter feed, and I was like, no, that's not the move. And and we also got to communicate and talk to each other, right? Like we can only be the best advocate, be the change you want to see. And so like if you're seeing stuff out there, making sure you're sharing the right information with your networks and making sure you're informing your social circles and saying, hey, no, actually this is what's going on, or this is where we are, and this is where we need to be, this is where we need to get to. Like even in our group, everybody wasn't for, we didn't want to pick one person over the other, so everybody may not have been favoring Kamala Harris, but coalescing around, hey, we are going to support this Black sister, whoever she is, and and now that it's Kamala Harris, we're definitely going to support her and be behind her 1,000%. Like I think that's where the power is that we have as a people, because we are not monolithic, but when it's someone of our family, if you will, that's where we all got to put our differences aside and come together and say, hey, we got her 1,000%, and we're going to do whatever it takes to get her through there.
Mamee Groves, 4-time national champion. What about you? How'd you get involved in this? And on that note, as Christina was saying, because maybe all of you weren't for Kamala. So let me just ask you that. Were you for Kamala, or were you for any one of the Black women that he might have chosen? Would you have been satisfied with that?
I would have been 100% satisfied. To see someone that looks remotely like me, I'm all for it, and I think that was the biggest thing. And how I got involved, of course, is Jotaka, the Gamecock connection. But for me, being someone in corporate America and being on these calls with all these wonderful, powerful women that are, in the political arena was very eye-opening to me. This was my first experience sitting on a call with all these powerful women that are just in the, like I said, like in the background, just moving things, making things happen. And then, what really made me set it on fire inside of my heart, and I'm like, you know what, I'm all in, whatever I can do, I'm going to do, is because the comment of too ambitious, being someone that works, not only I work in the golf industry, so I work in a very male, white dominated industry. And so being in that type of industry, and I worked in the hotel industry for 12 years before that, which again is ran by mostly in North America, white males. And so, when I heard the two words, too ambitious, it just took me back to a place when I first started in my career where, number one, I'm 6 feet tall. There's no missing me when I walk in a room. And I always felt like I had to make myself smaller than what I am. I can't do that. I always had to change my tone of voice to make people feel comfortable, or, always feeling like I'm being too ambitious. And so, when I heard that, it just was like, you know what, we're not going to allow this to happen. This is not only happening within the political party, but it happens to Black women and, across the board. Again, it's the same thing in corporate America. And so for me, when I was on these calls at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, going back and forth with Jotaka, I'm like, you know what? I really am. I'm going to support and I'm going to move forward with this, support her wholeheartedly. And like Christina says, Christina said, when I see stuff on social media, I don't get in back and forth in a debate, but I will put the correct information out there because it is necessary for us to do that, and I'm just excited about it. I think it speaks to a lot of women like me, no matter where they are in their career, if they're fresh out of college, or if they are the vice president or senior vice president or CEO, we all can relate to her. And that's why it means so much to me to be a part of this.
Amen. Well, and we're glad you're part of it. And see, we have a vast array of Black women folks from all walks of life. For the most part, 3 of them are Gamecocks, but still spaces, there is that differentiation. And the women who signed this letter in sheer number was a diverse group of Black women. LaTosha Brown, first of all, why don't you share with everyone what you and I did on Monday, what happened when you reached out to me?
Midnight Owl.
Yeah, right. And then what this means in terms of, because let's be clear, Black people have to be motivated. We have to be motivated to get out to the polls. And we need that inspiration. What it means to have this sister on the ticket versus the same old in terms of voter mobilization.
Well, as I get ready to talk about that, I do want, because I have got to acknowledge these bad young sisters. Like, at the end of the day, I've got to give them, Jotaka was our leader, right? She pulled this together, and I think it's critical. The reason why I want to raise something too is we need to also be prepared for what's coming. The attacks are not just coming on Kamala. The attacks are actually coming on us. And the way that the attacks are going to come is actually to divide and shift the narrative. And so there are 2 things in particular. I do a lot of, I've been contacted by a lot of media and been doing a lot of media stuff lately. And today alone, and I think this is critical, today alone, I got 3 phone calls from media outlets, major media outlets, start asking the question at some form or fashion around the generational divide in supporting Kamala. And what was interesting is I asked all 3 of them, what was your source? I hear what they wanted me to respond on the generational divide of why there were older people supporting Kamala and then younger people not supporting Kamala. And so I said, well, where did y'all get that from? Tell me what the evidence was, or where did you get that from? Not one of them could give me even where they had even a conversation. So somehow that narrative is being floated. And so I'm saying that because we got to get in front of it, because if you challenge them on it, like they're literally, like, to one of them had to acknowledge, it was like, I really don't know. Like, this is kind of what she was given. And I was like, yeah. So there are narratives that are being cooked up that are basically trying to say that there's this divide. But when I know, and I wanted to just lift up Jotaka and her team, in this space, because on that call, this sister we had 20, from a 22-year-old all the way up to a 90-year-old. Like, ultimately, we had the spectrum of Black women. And so what I am noticing, that there is a particular narrative, there's 3 narratives that I just want us to be mindful of, because the attacks are coming. And the way that the attacks will come is that if they can't attack and bring Kamala down, what they will do is seek to divide us. And to start pitting around our issues against each other. The first thing I've been seeing, because Black women have just been too strong and unified for them. It's about to run them crazy, y'all. They just don't understand. So they got to find something that feels like it's controversial in that. 3 reporters, y'all, 3 different. One of them was a TV outlet. The other 2 were print media, major outlets. And so I'm raising that because I was like, okay, I see it coming. And I just want us to get ready. I see it coming. So I think part of what has to happen is we got to tell the story. My grandmother used to sing this song, by and by, Lord, till the morning comes. All of the saints will come together as one when we'll tell the story, how we overcome. And like in that, and we'll understand it better by and by. The part of it in there is we will tell the story, how we overcome. And then ultimately, this is our story. We got to own it, stand in it, shape it. Anybody that comes up against us around this story, we shutting them down. Try us if you want to. Somebody better tell, Mark, you better tell them about, they don't know the fury of like you know from a Black woman. Somebody better tell them. But ultimately, I'm saying this because I'm seeing these narratives. Like now y'all are creating a narrative that it's the older women that push Kamala and younger women that, where y'all get that from? Matter of fact, I even raised it to him. I said, what's interesting is that it was the younger women who were leading this leg of the marathon, that there were sisters all along that had the baton and carried it. And at this leg on the marathon shoot, it was the young sisters that was like, come on, we ready for our part, that was standing up and creating the social media and keeping us on point. We just need to be mindful of that and pushing that narrative out. The second thing is, if y'all notice, the narrative now is that Biden went after selected Kamala Harris because she was a safe choice. She wasn't safe 2 months ago. That ain't what y'all was saying 2 months ago. That's not what you were saying 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, she was too ambitious. She was too this, she was too that, all of that. Now all of a sudden that she's a safe choice. Not only does that diminish her, but people don't want to give us our wins either, right? That it is without question that the reason why we have a Black VP, and we're gonna give Vice President Biden his props, because he didn't have to select her, right? But let me be real clear. Right, let me be real clear, who cooked up the ingredients and made this gumbo and was like, if you want something to eat, you're going to try this, right? If you're trying to eat, right? You ain't got to eat if you don't want to, but if you want to be fed, you might need to try this gumbo. So my point is that even in that narrative, that she's safe marginalizes the work that we've done, marginalizes the work that Black women have been beating the drum for the last couple of months. So now all of a sudden she was the most obvious choice. She was the safe choice in an attempt to marginalize that Black women were relentless across the board around. There was a core group of Black women that were relentless about this. So I think that's the second thing that we're going to have to dispel, a part of the narrative. And I think the third thing is this narrative that, yes, we've got this Black woman that's on the ticket, and that's for Black voters. Let me be real clear that when you look at Stacey Abrams, when you look at what happened with Ayanna Pressley, sisters have been pulling people all across the board. It ain't just that our candidates are attracting Black voters. They're also we build the most multiracial coalition than any candidate on the ticket. But the narrative, again, wants to reduce and marginalize us. Not this time. In the spirit of Harriet, y'all better come on. In the spirit of Sojourner Truth, y'all better come on. In the spirit of Amelia Boynton, y'all better come on. My point is, this right here, they're not taking this narrative and they're not taking this story. And we've got to be diligent about not just saying that we're going to win this election, but we ain't stopping there. We ain't going nowhere. So this ain't one of them things that we gave you what you wanted. No, we on to the next thing. Now we talking about what's the agenda, right? How are we going to see the agenda in terms of our people? We're going to take this moment and celebrate, because it is a moment to be celebrated. But I also want to make sure that we recognize that this moment was co-created, the conditions were created by Black women, right? For him to do the right thing. And then I got to bring in the brothers. So when I need some organizing, when I need I need to get a message out, when I need an ally, and when I need my brother on the line with me, there's 3 brothers that I call. One of them I work with, who is my partner, Cliff Albright. But Mark Thompson, I can bet on Mark, sisters. Like, I have never called that brother and asked him for anything, any support and help, and he has not showed up, and showed up in a big way. We called him in 11th hour. I mean, like in the 11th hour, right? Around the need of we wanted the men to know that this letter was circulating. And so Mark got on it. I couldn't even, every time I picked up my phone, he's like, bam, this name, that. You got him, sister? You got him, sister Mark? You know, what is interesting, though, I will tell you about what's different about the brothers and the sisters. Just a quick, just Black inside joke. The sisters were sending their names. The brothers were Reverend Doctor, Bishop, PhD, whatever. I ain't mad at them, but be real clear. The brothers are like, y'all gonna know who I am and all my letters and titles. but it was all good. It was all, and then I think I got one that says the Reverend. I was like, well, I wonder how you become the Reverend. But you know what?
We had a couple of those, LaTosha.
We did have some. Okay, all right. But I feel a little bit better. I feel a little better.
Well, no, that's amazing, and it is a big day. Now, you weren't hearing what someone was talking earlier, and I'm gonna go back to Jotaka now. And any of you feel free to jump in if you like as we do this. I got a little PTSD from the past 48 hours because I did talk to some millennials and some millennial women who had been thoroughly propagandized, but they can't name anything specific. And then I'm sure when the media were talking, they were talking about social media accounts that they didn't even know were real. So, Jotaka, what is your message to those who have any doubt, any concern, especially women who are like, well, I don't know. I know Ava DuVernay posted something yesterday that was really strong about that. But what's your message, Jotaka, to those who are still not won over? I was chastised the other day in a meeting for being too dismissive. Mark, you got to listen to this. You got to. But I corrected one brother. He said this because this is a Bernie Sanders supporter. And I said a lot of this is still coming from leftover Sanders stuff, to be frank with you. And this brother said to me, well, her being chosen was a victory for the neo-liberal wing of the party, that same old rhetoric. And I laid him out. I said, no, you disrespect Black women. This is a victory for Black women did this. This was not some neoliberal. Black women spoke up and made it clear to him that he needed to eat some of this gumbo if he wanted something to eat. So to use
the candidate might be the candidate right now if he knew how if he humbled himself and looked at the gumbo. Because part of the reason why they didn't get supported was that kind of arrogance right there that literally is why Black women didn't support, even though there were things in Bernie Sanders' agenda that we supported, but many of his supporters have a certain kind of arrogance. And I'm not even gonna talk about the list that they did put out, which were 2 white women and a Black woman, and didn't even include Nina Turner. But I'm gonna be quiet, I'm gonna go to my corner.
Amen, that's a whole nother thing. Jotaka, what's your reaction to all that? And please share a message for those listening and watching who have any doubt or question and frankly too lazy to look up the real truth about her record.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm known for being very nice. But on this question, this question, this is a point where my message to those folks is a simple question. Ask yourself, why are you doing the bidding of the enemy? Because that's exactly what's happening. And now, again, Christina said this, Black folks are not monolithic. And we absolutely have to hold everybody accountable. But what bothers me is that we are so quick to put Senator Harris under a microscope that we have not even put or subjected anybody else under that same microscope. Nobody was asking questions about Tim Kaine or his record, all of this other stuff. And yes, this is a very important year. This vice presidency is very important. But what bothers me is that we are so busy, we so overly woke that we want to tear down Senator Kamala Harris to the detriment of our people. And I would say this to those people and remind them that there are nearly 40 million people in this country that are not working. that we are in the middle of an economic hardship, that we have our brothers and our sisters are gunned down, choked, can't breathe over and over and over again. The officers that killed Breonna Taylor are not arrested. There's been no justice for Ahmaud Arbery, no justice for George Floyd, no justice for Sandra Bland, no justice for Trayvon Martin, on and on and on and on again. I can keep going on and on and on. We are living in a pandemic that has been mismanaged by the Trump administration. More than 160,000 Americans that are no longer with us, 5 million people have been subjected to this disease. It's mismanaged. We don't know when we're going to get out of this. And we're dealing with a racial pandemic in this country. And so you have to ask yourself, are you so woke? Are you so woke that you want us to continue to live like this? Because I can tell you from my own lived experience, from my little town in Johnsonville, where my cousin, who worked at a hotel where she contracted COVID and was told by her hotel that she could not get paid time off unless she could prove that she had contracted disease at her work. Or I can tell you about my other relatives that are laid off and they're not working and they don't have the hours because of what we're dealing with in this nation, that they, nor me, nor vast many millions in this country cannot afford to live with 4 more years of Trump. So we got to ask ourselves, what is the end game? What is your wokeness really about? Is your wokeness about being on an agenda, or is your wokeness about the people?
Right.
And putting these people back at the center? Because if you want to focus on the people,
That's right.
the ultimate goal is to get this out of the White House that's in the White House. We got to get him out. And so, yes, you can hold Senator Kamala Harris accountable. You can hold Vice President Biden accountable. I'm not saying that anybody gets a free pass, but we cannot allow ourselves to just be so divided like lines on graphing paper that we can't even get anywhere or be able to liberate our people in a manner that we can. And I think sometimes we are so overly woke that we sometimes are just have a bit of sleep deprivation that we can't really see in front of us. Because, you know, when I get super sleepy or super tired, I can't necessarily move forward in a way that I should. And I don't want to in any way downgrade some of the claims and some of the questions that these folks have. It's important. But I do think that it's a point in America where we have to come together, particularly as an oppressed people, and recognize what is the true enemy. Who is the true enemy? Because this is what they want us to do. They want us to be divided. They want to dilute our power. Because when we come together as a people, when we come together as a unified people, we are powerful. If we didn't have this power, they wouldn't spend millions of dollars to try to suppress our votes. They wouldn't spend millions of dollars to try to take over the postal service and slow down the ballots. It wouldn't be that important. So there is some power in our collective ability to come together and vote. But what we're doing is we're walking into the trap that they want us to walk into, and we have to be like, no. And I'm saying we don't have to give a pass, but we also, we just can't just shoot ourselves in the foot to the point where we can't walk free.
You don't have a lot of time left, but jump in. Sister Christina, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say something to follow up on Jotaka's point. It's like literally our lives depend on it, right? Like I was working for a local candidate. She was a client of mine in South Carolina, in Columbia, and you would think South Carolina is a Republican state. They're not going to worry about South Carolina in the general election because they're going to think they're going to get it. Well, Jotaka mentioned we have Jamie Harrison running for Senate in South Carolina. So South Carolina is going to be a national focus coming in November. And so you also got to think about all these other states that are typically red, but these voter suppression tactics that they're going to try in this election is going to be unprecedented. Like you can go in your Black communities where you go vote, and it's going to take you hours to go vote due to COVID-19, due to, you don't know where your election place is. You physically can't get there because the traffic is bad. So there's going to be all these unprecedented tactics to try to hinder Black people specifically from voting. And I saw it in the June primary here in South Carolina in a local election. And I called my friends on the Biden campaign. I said, hey, are y'all paying attention? Because the Republicans are doing a dry run in all of these states. So like literally, just to follow up on what Jotaka is saying, your little life depends on it. The life of your family members depend on it. Our whole livelihood, our opportunities depend on it. Fair housing was just revoked by Donald Trump. The Fair Housing Act was just pulled back by Donald Trump, which was something that the Obama administration worked on for years. And that is so critical to our community. And so we just have to, like Jotaka said, you can be so woke sometimes till you sleep. And we need to wake up and get on the same page, because we all got one common goal, and that's to get rid of Donald Trump.
Mamee, you have some closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the ladies. Our lives depend on it. Again, I think it's important. I like the code. That's what I've been seeing going around. That's what I've been sharing. Follow the code. And the code is have your sister back. I'm in a sorority, and that's the thing. What we do among us is among us. But when we in public, we're one. There's no dividing. So everyone just follow the code, and we'll win this. So that's my thing. I'm sticking to code.
You said you in the sorority. You in the same sorority she is?
No, I am a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority.
Like LaTosha.
But it's all Greek love.
What are you, LaTosha? I don't know why. I thought you. Okay. Are others of you in a sorority? No? Okay. But it looks like even those who are not AKAs want to support a member.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the truth of the matter is we're all in the sorority.
Black women. The big sorority of black women.
The sorority of black women.
So you got the sorority, you got the HBCU, and I just found out the other day she's a link. So that's a wrap. Okay, so that's a whole other thing right there. So take and this won't be the last time we talk, because we got to do battle against some of these demons. But Jotaka, what's next? What's next immediately on your plate in terms of going forward to win with Black women?
Well, Win with Black Women is a collective of Black women leaders, as LaTosha shared, from Hazel Dukes, who's 88 years old, to Celia McFadden, who is 21 years old, is a part of this network of Black women. And what's next is exactly what we have. We're going to do what we have to do. We envision and we know what we want to see as this historic. It's already a history-making moment, but we know it'll be even more historic the day that Senator Kamala Harris put her hands on that Bible and does that oath and is sworn in as vice president. But we know that we won't see that day unless we actually win. And so we're going to do three things. We're going to make sure, number one, that we're pushing back on the racism. We're pushing back on the sexist attacks that we know are coming, and they're going to keep coming. Well, number two, we're going to do everything in our personal capacities to leverage our networks, to leverage our influence, and to leverage our brilliance to ensure that there is a victory in 2020 for not only Senator Kamala Harris and Vice President Biden, but for all of the Black women that are running up and down the ticket in states across this country. And number three, we're going to make sure, as LaTosha says, that we're going to make sure that people understand, recognize, and respect the power that is Black women. We are 16 million voters in this country in 2020. We are the highest propensity of voters in the Democratic Party. We're the most loyal voters. We don't just vote ourselves, we take our families to the polls. In addition, we're the most educated demographic in this country. Black women are bad. We're leaders. We've been leading, we are leading, and we're going to continue to lead. And it's going to be very important in this election cycle that people in every walk of the political arena is taking their lead from Black women, that they're taking their lead from these Black leaders that are part of this collective and beyond this collective. And that is what we're going to do. And as LaTosha said, we call for a Black woman to be VP on this ticket, but that's not the only thing that we want. We want more. Yes, we want the Supreme Court. Yes, we want Black cabinet positions. Yes, we want senior Black leaders and Black women in the administration. Yes, we want an agenda that is a Black women's agenda, because what we know, and we put this out on social media, when Black women enter, when Black women win, everybody wins. When Black women enter, we see everybody. Black women, when we're at the table, we are fighting for everybody at the table. So whenever a Black woman is at the table, it is to the benefit of everybody. So we are going to make sure that people recognize, understand, and respect the power that is Black women. And that's what's next on our agenda.
Amen. Well, in closing, let me just say, all of you are great. And I am in formation as a Black man, and I'm going to encourage my brothers to be in formation. Two things. LaTosha, I always appreciate you blessing us with song. That song you sang was the first song I learned in church as a little boy. We'll understand it better by and by. I'm not going to sing it right now, but we'll do that. We got to do something together next time. Also, this is one of my favorite quotes, Queens. Dr. Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, who led the independence movement in Ghana, the first president of Ghana, said these words, that the degree of a nation's revolutionary awareness is determined by the political maturity of its women, not of its men, the political maturity of its women. So you all let me know that our Black nation is very much aware. We've got some work to do, folks. So follow the hashtag Win with Black Women. There'll be more discussions like this. I'll be involved in more discussions like this. You all gonna see me fighting on social media with some people too in the days to come. They've inducted me into the K-Hive also. So we're gonna be doing all of this. We want to thank Jotaka Eaddy, LaTosha Brown, Karen Finney, Mamee Groves, and Christina Q. God bless all three of you. And thank you, sisters. Win with Black women. Listen to Black women.
God, you are our refuge. Send our ancestors to guard our doors. Cast out this virus from our communities and our bodies. Heal, bless, and protect everyone listening and their loved ones. Thank you for listening to Make It Plain and Get Woke. Remember to listen, like, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If all minds are clear, it has been made plain.